This is a work of fiction. Names, characters, and events are purely imaginary and do not represent real people or situations. Hello and welcome back. A 7-year-old girl disappeared without a trace in the fall of 1996. For nearly 3 decades, no one heard from her again. But in 2025, her cousin moved into the old family home and found a photograph that should have never existed. What they uncovered next would unearth a buried truth more chilling than anyone was prepared for. Don't forget to subscribe, like this video if you enjoy mysterious stories, and share it with someone who loves cold cases and psychological thrillers. The attic smelled of dust, cedar, and thyme, that soft, quiet scent of forgotten memories. Abigail Grace had only been in the house for 2 days, but she already felt the weight of its silence. The kind of silence that wasn't peaceful, the kind that seemed to watch. It was the house her Aunt Miriam and Uncle Peter once called home, a small, colonial-style place just off Maple Hollow Road in a sleepy Ohio town where front porches still mattered, and everyone remembered the summer when Abigail Grace disappeared. That summer had a color, she always thought. It was the color of yellowed newspaper clippings and sun-bleached crime scene tape. It was the summer of 1996. Abigail was 7. Emily had only been 5 when Abigail vanished. Too young to understand the weight of it, but old enough to remember the aftermath. The quiet funerals of hope, the shadow it cast over every family gathering, the way her father never mentioned his sister again. 29 years had passed, and now Emily, a freelance illustrator recovering from a recent breakup, found herself alone in the very house where it all began. Miriam had died 3 months ago in a hospice. The house had been left to Peter in the divorce, and now to Emily through a string of quiet legal arrangements no one really explained. All she knew was that the attic needed clearing before the roofers came next week. And that something about being up here, the way the floor creaked, the way the sunlight filtered through slats in fractured patterns, made her skin tighten at the base of her neck. She moved a stack of water-damaged boxes aside, revealing an old trunk. Nothing fancy, just tarnished brass and cracked leather. It wasn't locked. Inside were photo albums, lace doilies, and a ceramic angel missing one wing. She almost missed it, a picture frame wrapped in fabric. Burlap, almost. Stitched shut with black thread. That was strange. She sat down cross-legged on the attic floor, thread cracking in her hands as she peeled the fabric open. The frame was ornate. Brass. Heavy. Her fingers left smudges on the glass. And behind the glass, a photo. Emily blinked. It was unmistakably a family portrait. Her Aunt Miriam, her Uncle Peter. And standing between them, grinning gap-toothed and wearing a red jumper, Emily remembered vividly Abigail. But she looked older. Not 7. Not the little girl from the posters or the milk cartons. Abigail looked 10, maybe 11. Emily's breath caught. This couldn't be right. There were no known photos of Abigail after her disappearance. How could there be? Her eyes scanned the photo. The background was odd. Not their backyard. Not a studio. A simple pale blue wall. No furniture. No shadows. It looked fake, almost like a staged set. The kind used in malls for holiday portraits, except off. There were no Christmas decorations. No Easter bunnies. Just the 3 of them all looking at the camera, except Peter. He was looking at Abigail. Emily turned the frame over. No markings, no date. Nothing etched into the wood. She studied it again now, seeing the detail. Miriam's expression wasn't joyful. It was tight, like someone told her to smile at gunpoint. Abigail's eyes, wide and glassy, seemed to be focused just beyond the lens. Something about the entire photo made Emily feel nauseous. She set the frame gently beside her and reached for her phone. She snapped a picture and texted it to her friend Jordan, a documentary filmmaker who'd once helped restore old crime scene photos for a Netflix special. Emily found this in my aunt's attic. Creepy, right? Doesn't this look too recent for 1996? The dots bounced. Jordan, wait. That's Abby, dude. This looks early 2000s, not mid-90s. Look at the contrast and light balance. That's not film. That's digital. Emily stared. Digital. In 1996, digital cameras were rare and expensive, and the Grace family definitely hadn't owned one. She pulled open the other boxes in the attic, looking for a camera, a folder, something. But the rest was unremarkable blankets, baby clothes, old report cards. Then she noticed something tucked under the floorboard by the wall, a tiny metal hook protruding slightly from between two warped planks. She pried it loose with a screwdriver. A small compartment. Inside a cassette tape, no label. Just a red rec sticker on one side. Emily exhaled slowly. She didn't have a player, but she knew the local thrift store had one. She saw it last week in the back corner near a basket of tangled cords and cracked CD cases. She didn't want to be paranoid. But why was a photograph of a supposedly missing child, an older version, hidden, wrapped, and sealed like it wasn't meant to be seen? And why was there a tape hidden beneath the floor? She climbed down from the attic, heart thudding harder than she liked to admit. She took the frame and the tape with her, locking the attic behind her. Outside, the wind had picked up. Clouds gathered above like bruises in the sky. She felt something shift in the house, not physically, but emotionally, as if the house had felt the disturbance too. As if someone or something had noticed that a secret had just been disturbed. Emily sat behind the wheel of her old Toyota Corolla, the photo frame resting in a blanket on the passenger seat beside the unlabeled cassette tape. The thrift store parking lot was mostly empty, except for an old Dodge Caravan with a cracked windshield and a sleepy-looking man smoking just outside the entrance. She hesitated before getting out. A part of her still thought this might be some weird misunderstanding. Maybe the photo was some kind of novelty, maybe Abigail had a look-alike cousin, or it was a composite image from a dream Miriam once had. But then, why was it sealed away, hidden like something shameful? The bell above the store door jingled as she entered. The scent of old plastic mothballs and faded detergent wrapped around her like a second skin. "Help you find anything?" a voice called from the back. It was Rosie, the manager, a woman in her 60s who wore bright purple glasses and had a voice like gravel soaked in honey. "Hi, Rosie. Still got that cassette player in the electronics corner?" "Sure do. $5. Probably doesn't work, but if it does, consider yourself blessed." Emily offered a half smile and made her way to the corner. The cassette deck was beige, cracked at one corner, and looked like it had last played music when people still rented movies on VHS. She plugged it into the extension cord strip taped to the floor. It powered on. She stared at the tape in her hand for a moment, then gently inserted it and pressed play. A click, then static, then testing. "Is it on?" Emily's heart jumped. It was a child's voice, young, tentative, feminine. "Okay, my name is Abigail Grace, and I'm 7 years old." Emily's breath caught, her hands trembled. The voice continued. "I don't know if Mommy will find this, but if she does, I miss you, and I'm okay, I promise. He says I have to be quiet, but sometimes he lets me talk in here. He calls it my cloud room. I don't think it's a real cloud, though. It smells bad. Like paint." A pause. "I don't like the blue lights. They buzz and hurt my eyes." Another long silence, then a whisper. "Sometimes I hear other kids, but they don't talk. They cry a lot." Emily's vision blurred. She hit stop. The silence in the thrift store was deafening. Rosie glanced up from her counter, noticing Emily's pale face. "Everything okay, hon?" "Yeah," Emily said too quickly. "Yeah, just old tape from family stuff. Emotional, I guess." She bought the cassette player without haggling, wrapped the cord around her arm, and hurried out. Back at the house, she replayed the recording in full this time with a notebook in hand. She wrote down everything Abigail said, every word, every pause. One phrase stuck out more than the rest. Cloud room. She'd never heard of that before. It didn't match any room in the house, and Abigail clearly said it smelled like paint and had blue lights that buzzed. That didn't sound like any child's bedroom. Emily dug through the storage boxes again. Among old bills and church flyers, she found a hand-drawn map. Abigail had once made a crayon sketch labeled My Dream House. Each room was labeled with wobbly handwriting, kitchen toy room outside, and, in the corner, Cloud Room. It wasn't just a nickname, it was real to her. Maybe it was somewhere Abigail had actually been. Somewhere secret. Emily stared at the drawing. The cloud room was marked with little blue dots and a frowny face. It was separate from the rest of the house. Was it in the backyard? She stepped outside. The lawn had grown wild, dotted with weeds and creeping ivy along the fence. The old tool shed stood in the back corner, half swallowed by overgrown vines. Her pulse quickened. She hadn't gone inside yet. The padlock was rusted, but she found bolt cutters in the garage. The metal snapped with a sickening crack, and the door creaked open. Dust danced in shafts of afternoon light. Inside it was just a mess, shelves with old garden tools, a rusty lawnmower paint cans, and boxes labeled X-Maz. But something didn't add up. The shed was bigger on the inside than she remembered from childhood. It was almost too deep. She measured it by pacing nearly 14 feet, but the outer wall from the outside the structure didn't extend that far. There was a false back wall. Emily knelt and examined the wood. It had a seam almost imperceptible, but no hinges, no handle. She tapped it. Hollow. She tried to pull, then pushed. Nothing. Then she noticed a thin ring of scuff marks on the wooden floor, as if something heavy had been dragged across it over and over again, always toward the rear. She stared for a moment, then pulled the lawnmower aside. Beneath it, the floorboard had a circular indent, not natural. Her fingers found a slight give. She pushed, and the board creaked upward. Underneath was a handle, a square hatch maybe 3 feet by 3 feet concealed beneath layers of dirt and dust. The metal hinges were rusted but intact. She opened it slowly. A wooden ladder led down into darkness. Emily stood frozen. The air that rose from below was stale, earthy, chemical. She leaned closer and caught the faintest hum of electricity. Then something else. A beep. Steady, mechanical. She couldn't tell if it was real or if her mind was filling in the silence. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, startling her. A message from Jordan. That photo, I ran it through some software. It's not a scan. It's a digital photo. Metadata says it was created in 2003. Emily didn't respond. She looked down again at the ladder disappearing into blackness. The cloud room wasn't a dream. It was here. She'd just found the entrance. The first rung creaked beneath her weight. Emily hesitated, one hand gripping the edge of the open hatch, the other trembling on the rusted ladder. Dust floated in the column of light behind her. The air down below had a thickness to it, a damp chemical smell that clung to her nostrils like burnt plastic and mildew. She glanced once over her shoulder. The yard was still. Afternoon light slanted across the dying grass, painting the world golden and false. Everything above looked normal, safe. But this was the part of the house that hadn't been mentioned in blueprints, tours, or memory, and that made it the most dangerous. She climbed down slowly, one rung at a time. 5 feet, 7, 10, her shoes touched concrete. It was colder down here. The kind of cold that seeps through your jeans and into your bones, not from air conditioning, but from absence. The air felt still in a way that suggested no one had opened that hatch in decades. She pulled out her phone, flicked on the flashlight. The beam illuminated a narrow hallway, maybe 4 feet wide, lined with unfinished plywood walls. Wires hung exposed in some places, others buried behind layers of crumbling drywall. The floor was concrete, damp in spots, cracked in others. There were no windows, no ventilation, just silence, a long, suffocating silence. And at the far end, a door. Not a shed door, not wood. Steel. Painted a pale pastel blue, the kind used in daycare centers and hospitals. A child's blue. Emily stepped carefully. Her footsteps echoed. The hallway swallowed sound like a sponge. When she reached the door, she noticed the handle wasn't locked. Just a simple turn latch. Her hand paused over it. She took a deep breath and turned. The door creaked open into a room that should not have existed. It was the size of a small bedroom, maybe 10 by 10 feet. The walls were painted with crude murals, animals, stars, a crooked rainbow clearly drawn by hand. Not a child's hand. An adult's attempt to imitate one. Stuffed animals lined one corner, all pristine but strangely placed. Each was turned to face the center of the room, as if frozen mid-witness. A small twin bed sat against the far wall, dressed in pale pink sheets that had faded to gray. Beside it was a plastic dresser, the kind sold at discount stores. Empty. And mounted to the ceiling a fluorescent blue light that buzzed softly. Emily stepped inside, throat dry. This was it. The cloud room. Abigail hadn't imagined it. This wasn't a dream. It was a prison. She turned slowly, letting the flashlight trace every surface. There were no windows, no vents, just one door. The air was heavy, still carried the faint traces of bleach. In one corner near the foot of the bed was a plastic toy recorder, Fisher-Price, covered in stickers. She picked it up carefully. No tape inside, but it matched the voice on the cassette upstairs. She knelt beside the bed. There were scratches on the wall just beneath the paint, dozens of them, tiny hash marks in groups of 5. She counted. 97. 97 days, or weeks, or... A sudden click behind her made her spin around. The door had swung shut. Emily jumped to her feet, heart thudding. But it wasn't locked. She opened it quickly, but the gesture rattled her nerves. She'd been too deep in the horror of the room to realize how fragile her sense of safety was. She backed out into the hallway, flashlight flickering. That's when she noticed the second door. Tucked behind a fold in the wall, almost invisible from the entrance, it had no handle, just a square cut into the paneling. She pressed her fingers to the edge. It gave slightly. A hidden panel. Behind it, a smaller room. Not a child's room. A workspace. A desk, a rolling chair, a bank of monitors, dead now dust-covered, power cords snaked into the wall, and on the desk, a pile of VHS tapes, each labeled in tidy handwriting. Cloud 04, ABG test. Cloud 12, unresponsive. Cloud 23, singing. Cloud 47, silent. Emily's blood ran cold. She recognized the initials. ABG Abigail Beth Grace. There were dozens of tapes, some stacked in neat columns, others crammed haphazardly into a milk crate. Everyone had a number, a date, a title. She picked one up. Cloud 10, bad behavior. 10/11/96. Her breath shook. That was 11 days after Abigail disappeared. There was a VHS player on the shelf beneath the monitors, old, covered in grime, but not broken. She hesitated. Part of her screamed not to look, to call the police, to stop. But her fingers moved anyway. The player accepted the tape with a mechanical whir. The screen flickered to life. Grainy footage, blue hue, static. Then, a small girl sat on the edge of a bed. Her legs dangled. She looked straight ahead. Emily's knees buckled. She collapsed into the chair. It was Abigail. Older than 7, maybe 8. Her face was blank, expressionless. She didn't blink much. In the corner of the screen, a timestamp read Oct 11, 1996, 9:44 a.m. A voice from off-screen spoke. What did I say about humming in the night? Abigail didn't answer. The voice was calm, too calm. No rewards today, understand? Still nothing. Emily hit pause. Tears blurred her vision. It was real. Every rumor, every half-whispered suspicion. It wasn't a stranger or a kidnapping gone wrong. Abigail had been kept here, right under everyone's noses. Emily's hands shook as she reached for another tape. Cloud 47, silent. Then another Cloud 59, new girl. New girl. Her stomach flipped. There had been others. Emily stood up too fast, her head spinning. She staggered out into the hall, sucking in the heavy, rotten air. She had to call someone, anyone, the police, Jordan, the FBI. But before she could climb the ladder, she heard something. Above her, a floorboard creaked. Then another. Footsteps. Someone was in the shed, and they'd just closed the hatch. Emily's hand shot up instinctively, pounding against the underside of the hatch. Hello, who's there? Silence. Only the muffled sound of the wind shifting through trees above. Then a metallic clunk, the unmistakable click of a padlock being fastened. No, no, no. She slammed her fists against the hatch again, splinters from the old wood biting into her skin, but she already knew no one was going to hear her from down here. The cellar, the cloud room, and whatever lay beyond had been deliberately sealed, and someone had just locked her inside. She stumbled back down the ladder, nearly tripping over her own feet. Her breath came fast, ragged. The fluorescent bulb in the cloud room flickered behind her like it knew her fear, mocking her. Her phone had no signal. She tried anyway, dialing Jordan 911 voicemail, anything. Nothing, not even one bar. She wasn't just trapped, she was isolated. She forced herself to think. There had to be another exit, a vent, a weak wall, something. She grabbed a rusted crowbar from beneath the monitor shelf and moved through the hallway, knocking along the walls, listening for hollow sounds. Then she remembered the far wall of the cloud room, the one with the childlike rainbow mural. It didn't feel like it matched the other walls when she first saw it. The rainbow had 7 bands, but the green one was slightly off-center, as though painted over something. She returned to the room flashlight now dimming and pressed her hand along the green stripe. It gave. Barely, but enough. There was a false panel behind the paint. Using the crowbar, she pried along the seams. The plywood shrieked as it cracked away from the frame. Behind it was another door. But this one was different. Metal, industrial, bolted, and etched in the corner beneath layers of grime were faded initials. UMR. Emily stared. That wasn't familiar, at least not immediately. Then it clicked. Walter Monroe Reynolds. Mr. Reynolds. Walt. The family's longtime neighbor. Retired photographer. Lived across the street for over 30 years. He used to help shoot family portraits at church at the 4th of July parade, even at birthdays. He was always around when they were kids. Abigail had loved him, called him Mr. Wally. He'd moved away years ago. No one really talked about him. She remembered her father once saying that man always had too many locks on his doors. Her hands trembled as she ran her fingers over the bolt. It was old, not rusted shut, but stiff. She braced herself, wedged the crowbar under the latch, and shoved. It gave with a violent snap. The door opened inward into pitch black. She stepped inside and immediately felt the temperature drop again. This room was different. It wasn't painted, it wasn't softened. It was a holding space. Concrete walls, metal shelves, a bench bolted to the floor, and in the far corner a camera setup. Tripod, lamp, folded backdrop. Her stomach churned. Beside the camera was a table with labeled containers, boxes marked with names and dates. She opened the first one. Inside, a small pair of shoes, girl's size, pink, faded. The label read, Abigail B. Grace. Entry 1. She opened another. A crumpled drawing. A sun and stick figure labeled me. Next to it, the man. A crude figure with long arms and no face. Another box. Inside, hair ties. A torn corner of a blanket. A VHS tape labeled Playtime, 1998, ABG, and Emily's fingers froze on the question mark. There was another child. She dropped the lid and backed away, nearly knocking over the tripod. Her mind reeled. If this room belonged to Walt Reynolds, did that mean he had taken Abigail? Or helped someone? Or worse, was this his studio? Something else caught her eye, a large cabinet bolted to the wall. She opened it. Inside were rows of labeled tapes, but these were different, more clinical. Subject, Lacey H. Subject, Christina M. Subject, unidentified, May 1999. Subject, ABG. Session. 72. Resistance increasing. Dozens. Maybe more. Emily stepped back, a sick feeling rising in her throat. This wasn't just about Abigail. This was a pattern, a system, years of documented abuse, children whose names may have never even been reported missing, or children whose parents were told something else entirely. She had stumbled not into a room, but into the archives of a predator. A noise startled her. Not from above this time, from behind. From inside the room, a slow, deliberate scrape metal against concrete. Emily turned flashlight, trembling. In the far corner behind the shelf, a second hatch began to open. From the floor, a pair of fingers gripped the edge, rising slowly. Someone was coming up. She stumbled backward, heart slamming into her ribs. Then a voice, Low, gravelly, familiar. I knew someone would come eventually. A figure rose backlit in the darkness, his shoulders hunched, a silhouette formed. She saw his face even in shadows. Walt. At least, what was left of him. His eyes had sunk, rimmed in yellow. His skin looked paper-thin. He moved like something used up. But he smiled and said, "You look just like your cousin." Emily ran. Back through the hall, through the cloud room, up the ladder. The hatch wouldn't budge. She threw her weight against it again and again. Then it opened. Not because she forced it, because someone had unlocked it from above. The hatch creaked open with a hollow groan, and light from the outside world poured in like salvation. Emily didn't think. She scrambled up the ladder, clawing at the edge of the opening, half dragging herself from the underground prison and back into the tool shed's stale air. For one brief second, she felt the cool evening breeze touch her face, and she could almost cry with relief, until she looked up. Peter Grace stood over her. Her uncle, Abigail's father. His face was pale, pinched. His eyes, rimmed in red, were hard to read. No surprise, no panic, just tiredness. "Emily," he said quietly, "you weren't supposed to go down there." Emily froze. The air shifted. Her mind tried to catch up. He wasn't surprised she came out of a sealed bunker. He knew it was there. "You locked it," she whispered, voice cracking. "You were the one." Peter looked away, jaw tight. "I didn't lock anything. I only reattached the padlock after Walt called me. Walt, he's here. He's still alive. He came up from below. I know," Peter said flatly. Emily took a step back. Her legs shook. "You knew he was alive." Peter sat down heavily on the bench beside the shed. For the first time, he looked old, not just in age, but in grief. The kind that dries up everything good in a man. "I found out, maybe 2 years ago. I was doing some cleanup. Clearing Mom's stuff after her stroke. I found a key. It didn't fit anything in the house. But it did open that hatch." He ran a hand through his graying hair. "There was nothing down there at the time. Empty monitors, no tapes, no bed, just paint fumes and rotted air. I thought God help me. I thought someone had already taken care of it, that the worst was over." Emily stared at him in disbelief. "You didn't tell the police, didn't tell anyone." "I didn't have proof, no pictures, nothing left." He paused. "I didn't want to rip everything open again." She wanted to scream at him, but something about his posture slumped. Ashamed, kept her silent for a moment. Peter's voice dropped. "I didn't build it. That room. I didn't know it was there during the time she was missing." "Then who did—" He met her eyes. "Walt. He was close to our family. Too close. He used to help out. Abigail loved him." Emily sat on the ground, her mind spinning. He kept her there. For how long? Peter's jaw clenched. "I don't know. I truly don't." But the tapes there were dozens. She was still alive for at least a year, maybe longer. Peter flinched. "I thought she was dead. I thought—" When they never found her and there was no ransom and the media moved on, he shook his head violently. "We tore this house apart. Police cadaver dogs. No one found that shed room." Because it was sealed. Because it was designed to be invisible. Emily looked down at her hands. Dirt under her nails. Splinters. Blood. "Walt just walked up from the other hatch," she said. "From beneath that metal room." Peter's face stiffened. "What?" "There's another hatch in the studio area, under the floor." Peter's eyes narrowed. "That's not possible." "The foundation. I saw him, with my own eyes. He came up." Peter stood. "No. If there's another way in, that means—" He trailed off. "That means Walt's been using it all this time, coming and going, living under our feet." Peter turned toward the house without another word. Emily followed. The sun had dipped below the trees. The yard was cast in purples and deep shadows. Inside the house, Peter headed straight for the basement stairs. "Where are you going?" "To check the foundation," he said. The original plans for the house didn't include any substructure under the back wing. If Walt dug something himself— Emily caught up to him halfway down. But just as Peter flicked the basement light on, it exploded in a spark. They froze. A sound came from behind the laundry machines, a low hiss. Then a slam. Peter ran forward. Emily followed. Behind the old boiler, a panel in the wall stood ajar. Not a door, not obvious. Just slightly tilted. Peter pulled it back. A tunnel. Roughly dug, reinforced with old wooden beams. It led toward the direction of the shed, but past it. Beneath it. Jesus Christ, Peter muttered. He built a whole network. Emily's voice was ice. He never left. He's been living here all along. Peter nodded slowly. Then he turned to her. You're going to have to go to the police. She blinked. We go to the police. But Peter didn't answer. Instead, he stepped backward and shut the panel. Peter. She slammed her hand against the door, but he held it shut from the other side. Emily, listen to me. His voice came muffled. They won't believe me, but they'll believe you. You still have your name, your record. I don't. Let me out, she screamed. Don't you dare! Just go upstairs. Take the tapes. Leave me here. Tell them what you saw. Tell them everything. The pressure on the other side vanished. The panel clicked open. Peter was gone. Emily stumbled upstairs, heart racing. The house felt empty, but also not. She checked the attic first, then the hallway, then the front window. In the distance, near the trees, a silhouette moved through the dusk. Stooped, lurching, slow. Walt. She picked up her phone, heart pounding. 1% battery. She snapped a photo through the window, just in case. Then she opened her mouth to scream for help. But someone was already knocking at the door. 3 slow knocks. She froze. It wasn't Walt. It was Jordan. "You left me 3 voicemails. I drove all the way from Cleveland. Are you okay?" She opened the door, nearly collapsing in relief. But when Jordan stepped inside, he stared at her like she was the one who had died years ago. "Jesus, what happened to you?" Emily grabbed his wrist. "Do you still have that forensic contact in Columbus?" Jordan nodded slowly. "Yeah." "Good," she said, handing him the bag of tapes. "Because we've just found the graveyard under the living room." The room was silent except for the hum of Jordan's laptop and the occasional clatter of a fan struggling against the summer heat. The apartment smelled faintly of take-out stale coffee and dust-covered VHS tapes. Emily sat hunched over the table, eyes locked on the digitization progress bar inching across the screen. Jordan leaned against the windowsill, arms crossed. "I don't get it," he muttered. "There are over 70 tapes here and only a handful even have dates. Half are just labeled by volume numbers. Some don't have labels at all." Emily didn't look up. "Start with the ones labeled ABG. Abigail Beth Grace. They're the ones we know are her." Jordan inserted another cassette into the deck. The screen flickered. Cloud 44, ABG, 11/4/97. Subject non-compliant. The timestamp appeared. The same familiar pale blue lighting. The bed in the background. The mural of the crooked rainbow still visible on the wall. Abigail was older in this one, maybe 8.5. Her hair was longer, tangled, her shoulders thinner. She sat at the edge of the bed, hands folded. A voice came from off-screen, calm, instructive. "What do we do when someone visits?" Abigail didn't answer. The voice tried again. "Say it, Abby." Her lips moved almost too soft to hear. "Smile." The voice said, "Good girl." Jordan paused the tape. Jesus. It's like she was trained. Emily rubbed her arms, or conditioned. He looked over. "This isn't just one guy. Someone built this, maintained it, recorded, cataloged, labeled, for years. Walt couldn't have done it alone." Emily turned in her chair. "There's more." She reached into her bag and retrieved a small, leather-bound journal, one of the items she'd grabbed from the false wall room before fleeing the shed. The cover was worn. Inside, the pages were covered in tight, cursive handwriting. Jordan leaned in. On the 3rd page, there was a name. Detective Arlen Dorsey. 9/21/1996. Entry consultation confirmed. Jordan looked up sharply. "That's a cop." "Retired now," Emily said. But he was the lead investigator in Abigail's disappearance. They scanned the next few entries. They were written like business notes, not guilt, not emotion, pure logistics. Client request for isolated environment satisfied. Soundproofing modifications installed. Monitoring integrity stable. Subject showing strong attachment to voice triggers. ABG compliant. Additional subject requested no interference. Jordan's mouth moved, but no words came out. Emily's voice was low. He knew. He knew. Maybe even helped build the room. Gave legal cover. She pulled her phone and showed Jordan the photo she snapped earlier, Walt's silhouette moving through the trees. I sent this to a friend at the county clerk's office. She ran a property zoning scan. She swiped to the next image. There's an unregistered utility line that runs beneath the Grace house. Never declared. No permit. Leads all the way to the woods, where Walt's cabin used to be. Jordan exhaled slowly. This isn't a one-time abduction. This was organized, monitored, protected. Emily whispered a system. They went back to the tapes. Jordan loaded one with no label, only a strip of green tape along the side. The screen showed a different room. Same dimensions, but no mural. Bare walls. A bed, a tray of food. A different girl. Maybe 9. Blonde. Dark circles under her eyes. She sat on the edge of the mattress, legs drawn up, silent. In the corner, date 3/18/2001. Not Abigail. No name, just a file number in the corner, subject ID 2098B. The girl looked at the camera, then directly at the lens as if sensing them through time. She whispered one word. Help. Jordan stopped the video. Neither of them spoke for a long moment. Emily broke the silence. We don't know how many kids passed through that place, how many didn't get names, just numbers, or got erased entirely. She flipped through the journal again, her eyes scanning entries. Then she stopped. Entry dated May 2002. It read, ABG archive relocated. Finalization process complete. House passed to associate for long-term containment. Surveillance discontinued. Case declared inactive. Record suppression confirmed via AD. Jordan pointed. AD, that's Dorsey. Emily nodded. Archive relocated. Jordan echoed. Where? What does that mean? Emily turned the next page. A single sentence. Fire suppression vault initiated, attic frame secured. Do not reopen. Jordan whispered the photo. Emily's heart dropped. He knew someone might come back, might look. She stared at the words again. Do not reopen. But she had. And now the fire, metaphorical or not, was spreading. Her phone vibrated in her hand. A number she didn't recognize. She answered cautiously. Hello? A man's voice, gravelly, a little breathless. You're Emily Grace. Yes, who is this? You need to stop digging. For your safety. For everyone's. Her throat went dry. Who are you? Someone who buried it for a reason. You open the past, you open everything that was locked with it. Click. The line went dead. Jordan stared at her. We need to take this to the feds. Emily stood slowly. No, she said, not yet. Why the hell not? Her voice was ice. Because the people who buried this, they're still watching. We go public without proof, they'll bury us too. We need more than tapes. We need names. She pulled out the folded map from Abigail's drawing. There was something she hadn't noticed before. In one corner, written in small blocky letters, perhaps a child's guess at spelling, Sacred Door, under Mouse Room. Jordan blinked. Mouse room? Emily smiled faintly. That's what we called the utility crawl space behind the kitchen. It had traps everywhere. Dad called it the mouse room. She looked up at Jordan. There's one place I haven't searched. The floorboards groaned under Emily's steps as she walked slowly through the kitchen of the old Grace house. It was nearly midnight, but sleep wasn't even a distant possibility. The light above the sink flickered every few seconds, casting the counters into intermittent shadow. Jordan followed behind her, holding a compact flashlight. His backpack was filled with tools, a pry bar, gloves, dust masks, a small headlamp. They both knew what they were about to do might be illegal. But at this point, legal seemed laughably irrelevant. Emily stopped at the far end of the kitchen, crouching beside a familiar cabinet. When I was a kid, she whispered, this was where Dad kept the mouse traps. I used to hate opening it. I always thought I'd find something alive and angry. Jordan knelt beside her. And now? She glanced at him. Now I hope I find something. She pulled open the cabinet door. Empty. Just warped plywood. the smell of dust and long dead glue. At the back, hidden behind a false wall panel, was the opening to a crawl space barely 3 feet high, the mouse room. It looked like any other old house cavity, low, dark, cobwebbed. But Emily saw what she hadn't seen as a child. A vent-cover dead center of the back wall had been affixed too perfectly. No dust, no signs of rat droppings around it, just clean screws and undisturbed paint. She unscrewed it with shaking hands. Behind it was nothing but wood until she pushed. Click! The panel gave. A narrow crawl tunnel extended back toward the center of the house, carved neatly between foundation walls. It had clearly been made deliberately, not by animals or time. Light, she whispered. Jordan passed her the flashlight. She clipped it to her shirt and slipped into the tunnel, pushing forward on hands and knees. The dust coated her palms and knees, made her cough. Air was stale. Not dead, just unmoved. After 20 feet, the tunnel opened into a small chamber. Not large enough to stand, but tall enough to sit in. It had been hollowed into the earth beneath the kitchen. No furnishings. Just one thing. A wooden chest sealed with a rusted latch. Emily stared at it for a long time. Something about it felt final. Like whatever was inside would answer questions she'd spent her entire life avoiding. She unlatched it. The hinges screamed. Inside were objects each carefully wrapped in plastic. A tiny shoe. A bracelet made of letter beads, Abigail. A lock of hair sealed in wax paper. A stack of photo prints, Polaroids. She lifted the first. Abigail staring into the camera, hair wet, eyes wide. The next her asleep on the small bed in the cloud room. The next her sitting on the floor, with another girl beside her. Emily froze. The second child was unfamiliar, maybe 6 or 7. Brunette, holding Abigail's hand. The bottom of the Polaroid had writing on it. April 3, first pairing successful. Jordan cursed softly behind her. She kept flipping. More images, more children. All girls. Some asleep, some looking straight into the lens. One with tear tracks down her cheeks. Then Emily found a page, folded and stuffed into a sandwich bag. Handwritten. Abigail's handwriting, wobbly but legible. If someone finds this, my name is Abigail. I was born in 1989. My favorite animal is a seal. I like drawing birds. I miss my mommy. I think I'm being good, but sometimes he says I'm not. Please tell someone I'm real. Please tell them I was here. Tears welled in Emily's eyes. She had proof. She had Abigail's own words. She passed the page to Jordan in silence. At the very bottom of the chest, beneath a false floor panel, she found one last item, a file folder wrapped in plastic. She pulled it out slowly, carefully. Inside, copies of school records, hospital forms, and a photograph of a girl no older than 5 missing a front tooth, dressed in a school uniform from a town nearly 100 miles away. Name Natalie King. Status missing since 2004. Emily felt the chill crawl up her spine. Natalie wasn't one of the children from the earlier tapes. She was newer. And that meant the timeline extended beyond what they had imagined. Walt didn't stop, Jordan whispered. Emily looked up. He never stopped, she said. He just got better at hiding. Jordan turned one of the hospital forms toward her. There was a signature at the bottom, not Walt's. She leaned in. Dr. A. Dorsey. Emily stared at the name, frozen. Detective Arlen Dorsey was a licensed clinical psychologist before he joined law enforcement. Jordan's eyes widened. He wasn't just covering it up, he was feeding it. They crawled back out of the tunnel, chest and folder in tow. When they got into the living room, Emily sat in silence for a full minute before speaking. I think I know why Walt called my uncle. Jordan looked at her. He knew someone had reopened the attic, that the frame had been touched, that the loop was broken. She stared out the window into the dark woods. Someone had to watch the watchers, and if Dorsey knew the attic was opened... She trailed off. Jordan finished the thought. Then someone's already coming to erase what's been found. They both sat in silence, surrounded by fragments of a past too painful to name. Then Jordan's phone buzzed. Unknown number. A voicemail notification. He played it on speaker. You're making this harder than it has to be. Return what you've taken. Burn the tapes. There are forces you do not understand. Your safety is conditional. Click. Emily stood slowly. No more hiding, she whispered. She stared down at the folder in her hands, Abigail's name, Natalie King's face. Next stop, the state police, the real ones, outside of Dorsey's network. But before they could move, Jordan's phone rang again, this time with a notification from the news app. Emily looked over his shoulder. Breaking fire destroys woodland cabin in Ashgrove County. 1 deceased. Authorities suspect accident. Emily's face went white. Walt, the last thread. Burned. The state police building in Summit County stood cold and square against the gray morning sky. Emily's hands trembled as she pushed the heavy glass doors open, the metal file box tight in her arms. Jordan walked beside her, clutching the digital drive with all the tapes they'd managed to copy overnight. They had chosen this precinct carefully, 3 counties away from Ashgrove, outside the jurisdiction of any of the names found in the journal or police reports. They needed new blood, officers untouched by the rot. The front desk sergeant raised an eyebrow as they approached. "We'd like to speak to someone in criminal investigations," Emily said, her voice steady despite the chaos churning inside her. "Name and purpose," the officer asked, clearly skeptical. Emily glanced at Jordan. "We have evidence linked to a 30-year-old missing child case. Multiple cases, actually. Some still open." The officer paused, stood, and disappeared through the back. 10 minutes later, they were ushered into a conference room. A female detective in her early 40s entered, introduced herself as Detective Lorna Fry, and took a seat. Emily placed the box on the table, slowly opened the lid. "The name Abigail Grace mean anything to you?" she asked. Detective Fry blinked. The Ashgrove girl vanished in the 90s. Jordan nodded. "She didn't vanish. She was taken and held. We have tapes, journals, photos, names." They handed over the drive and file folder. Frey listened in silence as they walked her through the contents. She didn't interrupt, but the muscles in her jaw twitched when Emily mentioned Detective Arlen Dorsey and Dr. A. Dorsey being the same man. Frey's fingers paused on the page with Natalie King's photo. She was declared a runaway. Never found. Her voice lowered. "You're saying she was in the same system?" Emily nodded. "Same room, same setup, same tapes." Frey looked at them both carefully. "You understand what you're walking into, right? This isn't just a creep in a basement. This is a network." Emily didn't blink. "That's why we came to you." Frey stood. "Stay put. I'm going to get someone from Major Crimes." As soon as the door shut, Jordan leaned in. "She believes us," Emily whispered, "for now." 10 minutes passed. 15. Emily's phone buzzed. No number, a text. "You should have burned it." Her throat closed. She showed Jordan. Before he could speak, the conference room door opened again, but this time a man in uniform walked in. Older, silver hair, trim posture, cold eyes. "Detective Frey said you two had some materials to turn in." He didn't introduce himself. Jordan tensed. "Where's Frey?" "She's been reassigned. I'll be taking it from here." Emily stood instinct screaming. "What division are you from?" "Internal Review," he said quickly. This kind of material should have gone through appropriate routing, not dropped off at a public desk. He held out his hand. Emily stepped back. "We'd like to speak with someone from Child Exploitation or the FBI." The man's smile didn't reach his eyes. "That's not going to be necessary." Jordan reached for his bag, and the man's hand went to his holster. Emily froze. Jordan went still. "All right," the man said, "let's not escalate this." He stepped forward. Emily acted without thinking. She grabbed the folder from the table, turned, and ran. Jordan knocked over the chair to block the officer, then bolted after her. They fled down the hallway, out the side exit into the alley behind the station. Emily's heart thundered in her ears. They didn't stop running until they reached the car 2 blocks away. They dove in, locked the doors, breathless. Jordan stared at her. "We were set up." Emily nodded, still panting. He wasn't from Internal. He was waiting. Jordan stared at the folder in her lap. "That means Frey's in danger." Emily's eyes burned. Everyone who touches this ends up burned. Or buried. That night, back at Jordan's apartment, they sifted through the remaining journal entries, hoping for something stronger than circumstantial evidence. Something the press or federal agents couldn't ignore. Emily flipped to the final pages. There were sketches, crude diagrams, a system of names. Then she found it. A list. Observation subjects. Tier 1, risk assessment. Her name was on it. E. Grace. Age 5. Monitored 1997-1999. Removed from candidate list due to strong family presence. Emily's hands began to shake. Jordan read over her shoulder. They watched you. She dropped the notebook. I was on the list, she whispered. They were going to take me. But they didn't, he said quickly. They didn't, Em. But they could have. Suddenly, everything snapped into focus. The way her mother never let her sleep over at Abigail's again, even before the disappearance. The locked doors, the strange tension at family barbecues, the way Miriam always avoided questions. They were grooming me for it. Maybe Walt picked me, or Dorsey, and something changed. Jordan whispered. They moved on to someone else. Emily stared at the window. The ghost of Abigail stared back from every reflection now. I was supposed to be the next one, she whispered, and I never even knew. The room was silent except for the mechanical hum of Jordan's laptop and the occasional click of Emily's mouse. The files were uploading slowly, painfully, to an offshore encrypted server, one used by a survivors advocacy group known as Fictional, known for exposing protected predators within state systems. Every minute the progress bar crawled forward felt like a countdown to war. Emily sat hunched, her hands hovering over a prepared email to a group of journalists, anonymous tips, independent reporters, true crime analysts, and even a few contacts Jordan had made during his documentary years. Attached. Video stills from the tapes. Abigail's handwritten note. The observation log listing Emily's name. A redacted journal scan that proved Dorsey's dual identity. Subject line, the network under your feet. Jordan leaned on the wall, arms crossed, face pale but focused. Once you click send, he said there's no going back. Emily didn't look away from the screen. We're already past the point of return. She clicked. The message left their hands and entered the world. 2 hours later, the first journalist responded. Then another. Then Echo Signal pinged back, we've received the packet. Going live in 12 HRs. Stay in a secure location. Emily's hands trembled. It's happening. Jordan smiled faintly. It's only beginning. They didn't sleep. Around 2:00 a.m., Jordan went downstairs to grab more coffee. Emily stayed behind, reviewing every file again, obsessed with making sure they hadn't missed something. She paused on a photo Natalie King, the missing girl from 2004, holding a small stuffed bunny. Her bunny. Emily's mouth went dry. That specific bunny cream-colored one ear drooping a faint ink stain on the left foot had been hers. She remembered losing it during a family cookout. It had vanished the same week Abigail disappeared. Emily scrolled faster, heart pounding. Another girl in a later photo wearing a jacket with her cousin's name tag sewn in. They weren't just grooming children. They were cycling their belongings, repurposing the familiar to manipulate the next. A buzz on Jordan's desk. She looked down. Jordan's phone was still upstairs. But the intercom screen lit up. Someone was outside the apartment. A man in a maintenance uniform stood in the hallway. She picked up the handset. Who is it? The man looked directly into the camera. He smiled. You've made quite a mess, Miss Grace. Emily dropped the receiver. Jordan? Silence. She ran for the stairwell 3 steps at a time and burst into the hallway above. Jordan. Nothing. Then she heard it, a struggle muffled behind the stairwell maintenance door. She threw her shoulder into it. Inside, Jordan on the ground, blood trailing from his scalp, barely conscious. The uniformed man turned toward her, knife in hand. Emily didn't think. She lunged, using a fire extinguisher from the wall to slam into him. He staggered, dropped the blade. They fought. Messy, violent, panic-fueled. She struck him again once, twice, until he crumpled. Blood on her hands. Bruised fingers. She grabbed Jordan. Stay with me. His eyes fluttered. You sent it, he rasped. I did. He smiled faintly. Then it was worth it. 6 hours later, the news broke. Front-page digital headlines. Whistleblower exposes underground. Child exploitation network. Spanning 3 decades, state detective implicated in cover-up of missing children cases. Exclusive recordings show long-term captivity of Abigail Grace. The public response was instant. Outrage, disbelief, demands for investigation. Family members of other missing children started contacting the hotline echo signal set up within minutes. But with the light came shadow. Peter Grace Emily's uncle was arrested. 2 other names from the journal were identified: a former juvenile counselor and a retired court clerk, both found dead apparent suicides. And Jordan. He never woke up? The head trauma was worse than expected, internal bleeding, too much too fast. Emily sat beside his bed as the machines were turned off. Her friend, the one who had stood beside her through the fire, gone. At Jordan's funeral, she stood alone. The press hadn't touched the truth yet. They focused on the sensational, the tapes, the faces of victims, the mysterious room, but they didn't know what it had cost. After the service, a woman approached her early 40s, tired eyes clutching a photo of a child. She didn't say her name, just handed Emily the picture. My daughter, missing since 2005. I saw her in one of the background tapes. Just for a second, but I know her face. Emily held the photo, fighting tears. You're not alone, she said. The woman smiled painfully. Neither are you. That night, back at Jordan's empty apartment, Emily opened the last tape they hadn't digitized yet. It was in a different format, mini DV, and she had to borrow a reader from a journalist friend. She clicked play. The video was older, blurry, glitchy. The screen showed a young Emily, maybe 4 years old, playing in a sandbox. The camera angle was wrong, not a family video. Low, distant. Then the camera panned slightly, revealing Abigail sitting next to her. The date, July 8, 1995. A full year before the disappearance. A man's voice on the tape. Subject pairing compatible. Risk tier green. Recommend extraction trial fall 96. Emily's face drained of blood. They had been watching, both of them, since the beginning. The Grace house stood still, blackened by time and silence. The local officials had already begun proceedings to seize the property, citing its role in the ongoing criminal investigation, but the paperwork hadn't cleared. Emily had 1 night left. 1 night to finish what she started. She stepped through the back door, flashlight in one hand, her breath visible in the cold autumn air. The house felt hollow now, as if it had given up pretending to be a home. Every footstep echoed louder than it should have. She passed through the kitchen, the living room, then down the familiar hallway that led to Abigail's bedroom. The room was untouched, still pale pink, though faded. The mural of a tree on the wall had long since peeled, and the air smelled of old dust and something metallic. She walked to the closet and opened it. Empty. But the floorboards behind it weren't original. Emily knelt, pried back one of the loose boards, and found what she'd hoped she wouldn't. A trapdoor. Not to a bunker this time, but to a crawl cavity between the 1st and 2nd floors, a space that didn't exist on any blueprint. She lowered herself into it. It was barely 4 feet deep, barely wide enough to turn around. Her flashlight trembled in her grip. There against the far wall was a box, wooden, splintered, marked with the initials ABG. Inside it, drawings, all Abigail's, all dated between 1997 and 2001 after her disappearance. Emily's eyes widened. Each drawing showed a room, same proportions, different walls. In one, the cloud room. In another, what looked like the camera room. And one was Abigail's bedroom. This very room, but twisted. The tree mural was dead, the window gone. A child's scrawl read, "The house inside the house." Her flashlight flickered. She turned and saw something glinting in the dirt wall. She brushed it away. A mirror, cracked, embedded in the soil, and carved into the dirt beside it in small, furious letters. "I was here, but I wasn't me. A." Emily leaned in breath, fogging the glass. Then she noticed something. Her own reflection wasn't matching her movement. She stepped back, heart hammering. Nothing followed, nothing moved. But in the silence that followed, a memory slipped forward. Not sharp, faint, like something seen underwater. A voice, her own, screaming, and the sound of footsteps going down, not away. Back upstairs, she sat on the edge of Abigail's bed. She held the last photograph again, the one that started it all. The photo where Abigail looked older than when she disappeared. But what no one had noticed, what Emily only now realized, that wasn't Abigail. It was her. Emily. 7 years old. Same red jumper. Same braid her mother used to make. The metadata had said 2003 Emily would have been 12, but the girl in the photo was 7. She flipped it over again. This time something scratched in the corner caught her eye under the glare of the flashlight. Very faint. Emily, always smiling, like she should. Her pulse went cold. The photo wasn't recent. It wasn't staged in 2003. It was from before 1996. But it had been edited. Walt, or whoever was behind the camera, had spliced features, digitally altered the face-preserved memories the way a taxidermist preserves a smile. But there was more. She opened the Polaroid envelope from the hidden chest again, looked at the photo marked pairing successful. This time she looked closer. The girl next to Abigail. She was younger, rounder face, missing a front tooth. But it was her. Emily. Her entire world tilted. That night in 1996, Emily hadn't just seen Abigail disappear. She had been with her. She had been there. But she'd been returned. And Abigail wasn't. Someone maybe Walt, maybe Dorsey had chosen. Not both. 1. Emily collapsed to the floor, gasping for air. The old forgotten memory uncoiled inside her like smoke. A room. A soft voice. Bright lights. Cold metal. A voice whispering, "Shh. One goes home, the other stays. The family won't even notice the difference." She had suppressed it. The trauma. The guilt. The choice that wasn't hers to make. When the police finally took over the property a week later, they found Emily's signed affidavit, a full archive of the materials, and a note left on Abigail's bed. "I looked for you everywhere. I'm sorry I came back. I'm sorry you didn't." Emily. In the months that followed, the public unraveling of the case shook the country. Multiple states opened investigations. Dorsey disappeared. A body was never recovered. Dozens of families came forward with lost children, suddenly suspecting they hadn't run away, but been selected. A new task force was created. The Cloud Room files, as they came to be known, led to the discovery of 3 additional underground structures across 2 states. But Abigail Grace was never found. Her body, if buried, was never located. Her name, however, became a rallying cry, not just for justice, but for remembrance. 3 years later, Emily stood at a memorial wall dedicated to missing children, whose cases were reopened after the Cloud Room scandal. A plaque read, "In memory of Abigail Grace, 1989, unknown, she was here. Please tell them I was real." A woman approached her quietly, placing a flower at the base. "Thank you for not forgetting," the woman said softly. Emily nodded, but she didn't speak, because she knew the truth now. She hadn't just forgotten. She had been allowed to forget. And someone long ago made sure of it. Abigail Grace was never found, but her voice, her drawings, and the traces she left behind made sure she was never forgotten. Emily didn't just uncover the truth, she lived it. And sometimes the most haunting stories are the ones where someone came back. Thank you for staying with us through this chilling story. If you found this case gripping, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the bell to never miss the next mysterious investigation. Let us know in the comments, do you think Abigail ever escaped, or was her fate sealed the moment the photo was hidden away? Because sometimes a single forgotten frame is all it takes to remember everything.